Coming up on Network Africa, over 100 people injured in Cameroon following a stampede at a senior high school in Yaoundé. 6 firms involved in Sudan's war sanctioned by the European Union Council. Plus, the United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres is hopeful of Africa gaining a permanent seat on the Security Council. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Cameroon, where investigation is underway following reports of multiple deaths at a high school stampede in Yaoundé, the nation's capital. At least 10 students reportedly lost their lives and more than 100 received injuries in Utu-Ebe High School stampede in Yaoundé. Footage shows police officers lining up in front of the school and detaining a young man as well. The overturned cars and broken windows, flat tires and damaged bodies. The Central Regional Governor, Nasiri Paul Biya, says measures were taken for the classes to resume, with the police and the gendarmerie securing the campus. According to media reports, the tragedy happened when students arriving late for classes rushed inside a previously closed school gate, causing a stampede that resulted in multiple casualties. The police later intervened to control the situation when riots and vandalism ensued. In Liberia, citizens now have a new president that was sworn in on Monday. The inauguration, however, saw quite the drama after the president, Joseph Boakai, could not finish his speech, appearing to pass out on stage. Reports say he had been helped away from the podium during his swearing-in ceremony. The 79-year-old had been speaking for around 30 minutes at his inauguration ceremony when it became clear that he was having difficulty continuing. Some reports also suggested that he suffered from heat exhaustion as the temperature reached over 30 degrees Celsius. Well, before being taken away, Mr. Boakai had already been sworn in as Liberia's oldest ever president at the ceremony held in the Capitol building, the seat of parliament in the capital, Monrovia. Well, we'll move on to Rwanda. The country has now included the events of the 1994 genocide of the Tutsis in greater details in the curriculum of its schools, from primary to secondary and tertiary levels of its educational curriculum. Well, this, they believe, will further help in its social re-engineering efforts targeted at giving future generations a proper orientation on how to avoid habits like destructive ideology, discrimination, and manipulation of unhealed wounds, which are some of the issues that led to the unfortunate 1994 incident. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, gives us more details in this report.
The Kigali Genocide Museum, which opened in 1999, now has over 150,000 visitors yearly. This museum, in the heart of the capital of Rwanda, is one of many spread across the country, and has buried here in mass graves over 250,000 people, 15,000 of which are families totally wiped out.
This memorial is
the custodian of the museum lists some other efforts by the government to forestall future occurrences as the country gets set to mark the 30th anniversary of the genocide.
With this pain of history, losing lives of people, but also seeing that after that darkness, that tragedy, we're seeing the light of Rwanda that is becoming a good point for Rwandans, ourselves, but also seeing where we are. I may say that we sing songs of hope and forgiveness after these 30 years.
Some visitors to the museum speak about their observations and some lessons to be learned.
It's really a good experience to insert, to see, to have the experience of this situation in Rwanda of that time. I hope that this old genocide memorial can help young generation, and not only here but all in the world, to not to see again something like this.
If you see the situations situation in the world today with Russia, Uganda, it's tough what's happened there. So I don't know if we have our lesson. I hope, of course, and therefore I visit this memorial to that we learn something about it. I hope so.
One thing is clear, the people of Rwanda are ensuring that in keeping monuments like this, they teach the next generation of the evils that happened before and during the 1994 genocide to prevent future occurrences from happening. From the Kigali Genocide Memorial, Dele Omoyeni for Channels Television News.
Well, today, Rwanda is commemorating the 19th National Dialogue Council known as Umushyikirano. Earlier today, President Paul Kagame, addressing the council, said if anyone attempts to put Rwanda in a situation where it has to fight like it has nothing to lose, it will do so for the sake of protecting its people. The forum is one in which Rwandans discuss issues of national importance, including national development, unity, and youth empowerment. While speaking on security matters in the region, the president recounted how he, on previous occasions, emphasized that Rwanda is wrongly associated with the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo conflict. Well, joining us now to speak more on this is our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, who is in Kigali for us. Hello, Dele. Good to see you. Tell us, how important is this council for the people of Rwanda?
All right, Layo. Well, quite important, as a matter of fact. So let me begin with that word that you did pronounce. Umushikiriano means dialogue from an open heart, from a sincere heart for all of the people of the country. It's the 19th edition, and what happened is that the president of the country, Paul Kagame, comes to this national dialogue and gives a State of the Union address. Of course, right behind me is this auditorium where we indeed use. It's the Kigali National Convention Center. So he gives the State of the Union address. He talks about the happenings in the past year, the wins and the pains, and then the gains as well, and of course, where the country is going as a people. And of course, after that, you have Rwandans in the diaspora who join, Rwandans who come in here, and they ask questions from the members of cabinet, they ask questions even from the president. Just a couple of minutes ago, before the conference closed, as a matter of fact, the president, Paul Kagame, was asking direct questions after a particular citizen raised an issue about flooding in the eastern province of Rwanda, and the minister that was in charge of that couldn't give specific answers as to the solutions provided to ensure that that issue is tackled. And the president was quite livid. The president said that he wanted a step-by-step action plan on defeating that particular matter. So this is a national dialogue where all Rwandans come together to address national issues affecting them, and also, of course, discussing the issues of the past year, look at where they have gotten to and where they are going to as a matter of fact, Lyle.
Well, yeah, this is said to be a National Day event. Does it have more to do with moving on from the genocide that happened in 1994?
Yes, indeed. Of course, you did highlight in your intro that the president talked about security issues. But before he talked about security issues, he pivoted back to that particular matter, and he said children born in 1994 will be 30 today and begin the process of discussing that particular issue of the Rwandan genocide that happened 30 years ago. Of course, that particular incident will be marked on the 6th of April this year, but activities have begun 30 years. And he's saying, look, young people of this country, whom people like him have bequeathed a nation that is succeeding to, have to have the presence of mind to ensure that the values that they have transferred to them, values of unity, values of oneness, values of non-divisiveness, talking about the two major tribes, the Hutus and the Tutsis, they've come together as a country. I say that they've bounced back from that ugly incident in their past, and as a matter of fact, they're forging ahead in the future. But the future generation has to come together and ensure that everything that each generation has bequeathed to them, they also begin to imbibe those values and send it to the next generation, so that the issues that happened especially in 1994, do not rear their ugly heads again, Lyle.
Indeed, and we saw your report there earlier before you came on. You and some other journalists, were able to visit the genocide memorial. I mean, it has been decades since the event. How do Rwandans still feel about, what happened?
Well, mixed feelings, Lyle, mixed feelings. We talked about these issues later yesterday night when we go back to our hotel with the journalists, and because we interacted with a number of Rwandans and even visitors to that museum. By the way, like I said in that report, that particular monument sees over 150,000 people yearly right now. Well, it's a mixed feeling for the people of Rwanda. One thing is certain, we do not want to experience this anymore. Well, there may be quite a number of people saying things and all of that. President Paul Kagame indeed said that, as a matter of fact, he's quite weary of the fact that foreign supporters of the country are not doing enough to ensure that these small dissidents don't start to poison the mind of the next generation. And it was quite clear in his speech. He said, look, nobody can teach you young people of Rwanda the kind of values that you need to imbibe. Those values are here already. We're teaching them already. Be your brother's keeper, be united, be selfless. This is your country. No matter what you want to do, no matter where you want to go, you will come back to Rwanda because home is what you have invested in and home is all that you have. So the president is quite clear-eyed on that. And so this is the message that they're passing to the people of Rwanda. And this is something that the majority of the people have to understand and accept. And so maybe that's why the president was clear to say that, look, we have bequeathed these values to you as a generation. It's time for you to get that the next generation. So a lot of everyone are clear that this is their country. They've sacrificed a lot. I mean, over 1 million people, well, official accounts, over 1 million people died in that genocide in 1994 within a space of 2 to 3 months. They say that's not something that they want to release anymore in their life. So they're clear-eyed, they're resolute, they stand as one to say, look, never again will that happen. But of course, they have to do the right thing, which is building the right values, engineering, and of course, like you said in the intro of my report, they've gone through both the primary, the secondary, and the university level to say, look, these are the values that we want. These are the things that we can preach. And of course, like Nelson Mandela said, Lyle, if you can learn to hate, you can learn to love.
Indeed, but thank you very much, Adele Omoyeni, our correspondent there in Kigali.
Thank you, Lyle.
We're still ahead on Network Africa. West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS launches a design app for young entrepreneurs. More details after the break. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program on the Israel-Palestinian conflict in Gaza. Namibia's Deputy Prime Minister Netumbo Nandi is calling on the non-aligned movement, NAM countries, to influence the United Nations in resolving the conflict. She's also calling for the cessation of hostilities and to allow humanitarian assistance into Gaza. According to her, one of the goals of the movement is to reform the UN Security Council, as most of its permanent members share the same viewpoint.
The non-aligned movement is an organization that makes up the biggest number of the developing countries. And when we talk about Palestine, Gaza, we are talking about a developing nation. So the non-alignment are in a better position to make use of their number in order to influence the international community. And that has happened, particularly when it comes to the General Assembly. You remember that already the General Assembly has passed the resolutions that are in favor of the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, and particularly calling for the cessation of hostilities, basically to stop the war, and also to allow humanitarian assistance. I will go back to the non-alignment principle of solidarity, unity, cooperation, and complementarity. Now we have South Africa that has brought the case to the to the International Court of Justice. And quite a number of member states during this meeting, they have repeated their support to South Africa's action. Of course, now we are all waiting. And also remember, last year in June, at the UN level, member states, some of them including Namibia, we have already brought the case to the International Court of Justice, whereby we are asking the legality of Israeli occupation of Palestine. We have to accept that we are in the world where you have some who are strong, and the strength can be characterized in different ways. They might be big, strong in terms of the size of their country, big in terms of their economy, their military, and all these things really matters in international relations. But now, as non-aligned, we feel that in our number, no matter that individually we are small, in all different characteristics I've mentioned, if we can work together, we'll be able at least to help the citizens, the majority of the world citizens. To look at the UN itself, with the Security Council, which is having the 5 permanent members, and you see the majority of those 5 permanent members, they are aligned to one thinking, and that creates a serious problem in the balance of power in terms of discussion in the Security Council. In fact, now the Security Council is like paralyzed. So that is why within the non-aligned, we continue to demand for the reform of the UN Security Council. The non-aligned also looking now when we are talking about sustainable development.
Well, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is reiterating his call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages.
People are dying not only from bombs and bullets, but from lack of food and clean water, hospitals without power and medicine, and grueling journeys to even smaller slivers of land to escape the fighting. This must stop. I will not relent in my call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. And we must do all we can to prevent spillover of this conflict across the region, in the West Bank, across the blue line between Israel and Lebanon, and in Syria, Iraq, and the Red Sea. The refusal to accept the two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians, and the denial of the right to statehood for the Palestinian people are unacceptable. These would indefinitely prolong a conflict that has become a major threat to global peace and security, exacerbate polarization, and embolden extremists everywhere. The right of the Palestinian people to build their own state must be recognized by all. Conflicts, poverty, inequality, geopolitical fragmentation, and climate catastrophe are the result of choices the world makes or fails to make. Guided by the solutions being discussed here, and the spirit of trust, understanding, and solidarity that is infused in NAM from the start, I know we can tackle these challenges together and make the right choices in the time ahead of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We're still speaking about the Secretary General of the United Nations. He says all 5 permanent members of the Security Council have agreed Africa must have due representation in the body. Mr. Guterres said this while addressing the 3rd summit of a group of developing countries known as Group of 77 in Kampala, Uganda's capital. The African Union seeks to secure 2 permanent seats on the UN Security Council.
Declarations, public declarations,
I've seen the permanent members being favorable to at least one African permanent member. The United States said so, the Russian Federation said so, China has been positive in this regard, the UK and France too. So for the first time, I'm hopeful that at least a partial reform of the UN Security Council could be possible for this flagrant injustice to be corrected and for Africa to have at least one permanent member in the Security Council. It is not guaranteed, nothing that of course depends on the Secretary General, it depends exclusively on Member States, on the General Assembly, but for the first time I think there are reasons to be hopeful.
The European Union has imposed sanctions, including asset freezes on 6 firms it says are responsible for arming and financing the rival warring factions in Sudan. Well, among the companies targeted are 2 involved in the manufacture of weapons and vehicles for the Sudanese armed forces and 3 others involved in procuring military equipment for the paramilitary rapid support forces. Both sides have been accused of war crimes during this conflict that started last April and has left thousands of people dead and millions of people displaced. In a statement, the EU says it remained deeply concerned about the humanitarian situation in Sudan and it reaffirmed its support for the Sudanese people. All diplomatic efforts so far to try and halt the conflict have failed. Job creation and protection of intellectual property in the ECOWAS region formed the crux of conversations at the launch of AfriDesign. That's the mobile design application created by the World Intellectual Property Organization and ECOWAS with funding from the Japanese government. The launch, which happened at the ECOWAS Secretariat in Abuja, saw stakeholders, including the Japanese ambassador to Nigeria, encouraging designers across the region to showcase their designs using the app with assurances of copyright protection when they do. The Japanese ambassador urges Nigerian and West African creatives to jump on the app and see their intellectual property protected.
Design can also be easily copied. That's why protecting intellectual property through copyright and related right is crucial. I just downloaded AfriDesign yesterday, and I found it more than just an app. It's a gateway to understanding these rights and the tools available to protect our creativity. Imagine this. We designed a stunning fabric pattern that is unique to our culture and heritage. With AfriDesign, we can easily learn how to register our design and protect it from unauthorized use. This allows us to control our work, negotiate fair deals, and build a successful brand around our creative vision. But design isn't just about protection, it's about creation. That app isn't just about information, it's a catalyst for connection with the global design community. This innovation platform, the first of its kind, connects designers with opportunity, funding, and businesses, fostering collaboration and the robust design ecosystem in the ECOWAS region and beyond.
And finally, on the program, speaking of high-profile visits, the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken will be arriving in Nigeria today to begin the 3rd leg of his Africa tour. Mr. Blinken will be coming from Cote d'Ivoire, where he attended the ongoing African Cup of Nations at the Alassane Ouattara Stadium. He is scheduled to meet with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Abuja later this evening. He's also scheduled to meet with employees and families of the U.S. Embassy and to hold a joint press briefing with Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuga. The meeting comes as Mr. Tuga says efforts to tackle the backslide in democracy, highlighted by the wave of coups that have removed 8 West and Central African leaders since 2020, would top the agenda during his meeting with with Mr. Blinken. They will be discussing ways to uphold democratic ideals and the importance of strengthening democratic institutions in the region. Nigeria has maintained good relations with Washington as both have partnered on various economic, democratic, and health initiatives. Experts expect that the meeting with President Bola Tinubu will also highlight Nigeria's security situation and issues surrounding immigration and China's growing influence on the continent. And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.